Yeah. Exactly. So today is the 20.
I never know.
Like,
And then, but she I'm gonna go down in.
I'm just trying to see, why does this packet say the 23rd?
That's just the date I saved it.
Okay, that's the right one. Okay. All right, so we all right, we've got 1 minute.
No liaison reports tonight, there's snow coming.
I don't even know what the word is. I haven't even been able
We're
to
gonna start
kind of
doing this
read
now,
the forecast, which I haven't been able to read this forecast. Let me find that in here.
Still like 4 to 9.
Is it 4 to 9? Anything?
Starting around 8.
I got something from the state though.
afterwards. I need to grab her.
No way. The guys with plows are out there.
I get to go home after this and go find my snow.
And all the money.
Got to take it out today.
Not here to start.
Take it out.
Good side.
Okay. So I just want to see you.
We're at top of the hour.
Yep, we are. Was that out? Okay, great. All right, well, it's 7 o'clock, so I would like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, February 27th. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. No real first select moments updates, except 2 things I'll mention to the community. First of all, get ready for the snow. I guess they're still saying anywhere from 4 to 8 inches for the shoreline area. It's a little unpredictable, but I know Madison Public Schools have already been canceled for tomorrow. So enjoy the snow day, and hopefully it'll be our last of the season. First and last. And the only other thing I would comment on is some of you may have seen, and the food waste diversion program that residents can sign up for to get their food scraps collected at their homes and then sent to a special facility that will turn them into energy. The deadline to apply for that program is this Friday, and then we'll be rolling out the program end of March or early April for those where it works out in terms of the collection routes and stuff. So I just want to highlight that you have till the end of the week to apply for that program.
How many towns in the state are doing that? You remember?
Well, it's all different. We're partnering with Guilford, but other towns have municipal waste collection. So some of them are trying the program and through their municipal collection. So there's probably at least a dozen towns that have been experimenting with this so far. So that is it for my updates. Any liaison reports or selectmen comments?
I attended.
Well,
On February 16th, Planning and Zoning met, and they did approve 2 zone boundary changes, one for a development on New Road to construct 32 to 45 dwelling units. And then the other is for a zoning change on Route 1 where the Winter Club and Barberry Hill or Barberry Farms is that development there. So to make a new development district.
okay. That's
So those were both approved at the February 16th
I know that was
It wasn't really-
Yeah,
yeah, just the concept, the PPP,
concept,
right? So
yes.
now the proposals would come forward on the actual project, I think, right? So we're
correct.
still-
Yeah, no proposals on actual projects for the one on Route 1. The plan has already been put forth for New Road. Mhm.
No other second comments?
I have 15. I'm
Okay.
gonna take the next hour. Get it? No?
Okay, all right, do we have any citizens, if you have any comments, please raise your hand.
I do have someone raising their hand.
Okay, we just ask you keep it to 2 minutes, just because we've got a long agenda tonight, and obviously want to get out of here before the snow gets bad. So, go ahead. So she'll raise you up. Okay, great.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hello, this is Chuck Emerson. I'm the current president of Madison Little League, and I just wanted to, I guess, speak briefly for a minute about the ARPA vote on the Nelson Lights, which is going to happen a little bit later. So thanks for allowing me just a couple minutes to reiterate on behalf of Madison Little League our support and financial commitment of up to $100,000 to assist with the cost of the Nelson Lighting Project, which is, like I said, on the agenda to be discussed a little bit later tonight. As the president of Little League, I've been receiving emails of support over the last few months from current and past families and board members about this project. And it's my understanding that emails have been sent to many of the members of this board as well. As Scott Murphy can attest, since the days of his tenure as president of Madison Little League, the lighting of the Nelson Fields at Surf Club has been a project that has either been on the CIP list or discussed as a possibility for years. And just from my observations and perspective, now's a great time to consider this CIP approved project due, number one, to the contribution from Madison Little League, and also number two, for the, due to the funds that are available from ARPA, and not to mention the fact that, much of the needed wiring and infrastructure is already in place at the Surf Club, which will definitely help keep the cost for the project reasonable. It's a little bit redundant from, some of the earlier presentations that Madison Little League presented to the CIP committee, but just some interesting facts. Madison Little League is the largest youth sports organization in Madison. Typical annual registration is between 700 and 800 players, ages 4 to 12, and the number is growing. We're seeing about a 10 to 20% increase in registration year over year, primarily in the younger age groups, which ensures lots of use of the lights in the years to come. With lights, Madison will be able to host some additional tournaments for Little League International and other organizations, which is great for the town and local businesses. For example, to host sectional baseball and softball tournaments, you need to have fields with lights. And then there are also some other opportunities, such as the Seabreeze tournament and other regional tournaments that we can get more involved with. And I think that the major benefit of having these lights is the extended field use hours, which will hugely benefit us when juggling fields for practices and games, and it'll definitely help make play safer in those months with shorter daylight hours, which does tend to be a problem in early spring and fall. So overall, not to drag on here, but I think installing lights at Nelson Field, it's a great gift that the town of Madison and Madison Little League can give to the community. I don't think there's a time that's better than now. The lights will be used for many years while providing a positive learning environment for the kids of Madison. So when you're voting later, please consider voting yes when approving ARPA funds for this project. And I think that's about it. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Great,
Thanks, Chuck.
thank
There
you.
are two other people with their hands raised.
Okay, great. Yep.
Comment.
So as you move up, please state your name and address before your comment, please.
Elliot, you are muted still.
Thank you. Good evening, Elliot Kaiman, Kaiman, 11 Genesee Lane. And I'm here as the commissioner for the Small Diamond Madison Travel Baseball Program. Also been involved for years in Little League. Chuck did a great job, so I won't take time repeating what he has. I would just add that Madison Travel Baseball is very much in support and ask for your support of this project. And our organization will be working with Little League to help come up with the financial contribution that Chuck has outlined already. And I guess lastly, I'll just add as a coach out on the field for many years with multiple boys in the programs, that just really touching on the safety point that Chuck made is that we adjust and plan, especially during those shoulder seasons, to get off promptly and make sure everybody's safe. And sometimes, especially with cloud cover and other things, that can just sneak up on you fast. And, you know, knock on wood, haven't had any significant injuries, but we had some close calls with the dust coming in. And so I think this would go a long way to avoiding injury and as Chuck said, really expanding access to the beautiful fields that we have down there. So thanks very much for your consideration.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate the comment.
There is one more hand.
Yep, okay. State your name and address, please. And remember to unmute yourself. Brandon, unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. Brandon Romanchuk, 455 Horse Pond Road in Madison. It's Romanchuk, Romanchok. I'm the current treasurer of Madison Little League. I won't reiterate some of the fine points that Elliot and Chuck brought up, but I did want to add two quick items I didn't hear addressed. In terms of finances, apart from our pretty sizable contribution, I did want to emphasize that the cost projections and accounted for cost increases in subsequent years. So the sooner that this project can be completed, the lower the overall cost is, as well as the corresponding commitment to the town if they do decide to complete the project. So I did want to mention that the figures provided to you, I think, anticipated a year 5 install, but if we do it earlier than that, then the cost would presumably be lower. The only other quick item I'll mention is having participated as a volunteer coach, the expanded hours afforded by having the fields illuminated at night would allow the town and its athletes to be more competitive among some of the other neighboring towns that do enjoy greater playing time. So I did want to just make those 2 points known to the group, apart from all the feedback that we've received from our constituents, as Chuck mentioned. Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you. Any other hands raised?
No other hands raised.
Huh? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for your comments. Now we'll move on to the business part of the agenda, item number 5. And I'd actually like to make a motion to amend the consent agenda to include a list of appointments that were submitted to the Board of Selectmen this afternoon via email, adding item 2 through 6 under item E. Can I get a second for that?
Second.
And any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, great. And then now I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Okay, great. Thank you very much and appreciate that. So we'll move on. Loving the consent agendas. Okay, now I'd like to actually invite a member of the public here, Lisa Nee, who is going to be doing a presentation to us about accessibility in our town. And I know Lisa has had the opportunity to meet with myself as well as the members of the Board of Ed and the superintendent's office, just talking about different ways that the town could be more welcoming and kind of address some of the issues of accessibility for certain parts of our population. So she has a presentation to share. And so we'll let Lisa just talk through her thoughts on this issue. And I think she brought some interesting things to light when I met with her. And so I thought it'd just be helpful for the board to hear that.
How do I now
So you want to do, go to, share the screen?
Not seeing. Where is it?
You need help?
Yeah.
Here comes Hill.
Yeah.
Do you see share screen? Oh, I'm supposed to hover or something. Oh, it's right there. Yeah. There we go, excuse me, and there we go.
There you go.
And we practice, so
Okay.
let's see, is it gonna, it should make the rest of this disappear. Very cheery. Okay, it's not making the,
So you want to go to the,
yeah, but it was supposed to, if I hit F5.
yeah, try to, no, didn't do that, well, that's okay, we can see it, so you can just click down on the side. to go to
Yeah,
different
yeah,
sites. Yeah,
here we
we can
go.
see it,
And
yeah.
yes,
There's also like a presentation mode, I just don't know where it
In
is.
the text menu above, there's a slideshow.
yeah, there it
There,
is. It's
yeah,
blocked by,
Okay, well,
okay.
there you go.
Here we go, because we want to see you guys full screen.
Of
Look at that
course.
great picture. I was here the night you took that picture, and your little son was running up and everything. It's really adorable. So let's start off. I'm really grateful for all the work you've been doing. I mean, you came out of the pandemic, here you are, keeping going, improving everything. But I am here, as we might guess, because I want to talk about what is the message from the town of Madison about people with disabilities. And this includes inclusion, but it's also a lot of other things. I want to make you sure that, you know, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an architect, I'm not a civil rights scholar. What I am is I raised 3 children in Madison. I'm a parent of a child with a disability. I'm on the board of Disability Rights Connecticut, which is the federally mandated protection and advocacy organization. I'm a highly experienced media executive, and that more than all of those, that's what I'm expert at. And I've consulted Fortune 500 companies on their brands, on their messaging, what they are saying to their consumers. So that I'm pretty good at. So my husband over here, we're all taxpayers, including my son, who is a mechanic in Waterbury. He's a person with a disability, and he too is a taxpayer. And I know that's really important for everybody to know who they're representing. So let's start with, this could be a 6-week course, right? So I'm gonna make it nice and short. The ADA was signed into law 32 years ago, and it's one of the most substantial pieces of civil rights law, because it represents 10% of our population, which is only getting bigger. The ADA prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in several areas, including employment, transportation, public accommodations, communications, and access to state and local government services. The ADA's 4 primary goals are full participation, so we mean full participation in your community, equal opportunity, independent living, and self-sufficiency. And I highlight those 2 because what we want is people to be independent, to be able to open the doors by themselves, to be able to live somewhere by themselves, to be able to grocery shop by themselves. So having things that are barriers are not helping people be self-sufficient and independent. And it is we as a society that make people disabled, right? You 3 take off your glasses.
Oh, I can't.
Right? Right? And had glasses not been invented, all of you probably wouldn't be here today, right? So you're all disabled. I'm disabled. You know, they had one of my favorite projects for people to experience is everybody at this table, spend a week without a car and see how you get around. How do you get your kids places? How do you get to work? How do you get to the grocery store in the town of Madison? Not easy, unless you're going to spend a lot of money on an Uber or beg friends, which is not self-sufficient and not independent, correct? So Title II of the ADA, who has responsibilities under the ADA? Well, I'm not just doing this because you're doing a favor. to people with disabilities or that you're being nice, it's because it's the law. It's the law. So Title II of the ADA applies to all state and local governments and all departments, agencies, special purpose districts, and other instrumentalities of state or local government. It applies to all programs, services, or activities of public entities, from adoption services to zoning regulation. Title II entitles that contract with other entities to provide public services, such as nonprofit organizations that operate programs or convenience stores that sell lottery tickets, also have an obligation to ensure that their contractors do not discriminate against people with disabilities. This is big. Well, we're short on time. You can see it applies to every business, right? Hotels, restaurants, gyms, shops, and many more. Okay. In 1992, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act was amended to correct terminology, recognizing that the word handicap was being equated with beggar. Hand in cap, people on the street with their hand, with a cap in hand begging. The word handicap was taken out of and replaced with person with a disability. And person first language was adopted in 1974. And I've still seen it today all over Madison, non-person first language. Handicap equals beggar, and language matters. So if this information is news to you, you're not alone. Connecticut ranks 50th in the United States in inclusion of people with disabilities. That's last. That is last. CT is like growing up in a household that uses unacceptable language and attitudes. You know, you say, oh, well, you know, they grew up in a household with blah, blah, blah. That's why they say that. Well, here we are. So you can see it's right there. There's the index. You're welcome to go there and take a look at it. There's many other surveys that rank Connecticut pretty low. Let's explore the message we experience as everyday citizens. So this happened when I came to Peggy. I'm like, isn't this a great, don't we love teachable moments? I'm out walking around and look what I see and experience just in a limited amount of the town. And from the outside, I'm not talking about I went in and said, oh, do the bathrooms work? Do they have this? Do they have that? How's the hiring? No, this is just what I see as a regular everyday citizen. So we'll begin with the beggar son. Madison Police Department, town offices, town fields, town gym. The Learning Center, our littlest people are learning that that's an okay word. The Arts Barn, which has a lot of issues up there. Madison Youth and Family Services, courthouse, post office. It's everywhere. You can't escape it. And so you look at this and you see these signs, handicap access in rear on both of these businesses. And why should we care that a business posts that sign? I'll tell you why. We would take action against a sign on our streets that used a slur. So I'm Irish, right? Let's say that sign, instead of said handicap access in the rear, it says Irish access in the rear. It's the same thing. It's the civil rights of the person, of the citizen that lives in this town. So the good news is I also met with Craig Cook and Seth Plaskin, and all but 2 of the handicap signs have been removed from the Madison Public Schools. So bravo, they did a really great job. We want to open the doors to everyone. People with disabilities are the largest and fastest growing minority in the United States. Hello, boomers, right? They control $1 trillion in total annual income. They have friends, family members, and business colleagues who accompany them to events and outings. And they use businesses and facilities that are accessible to them. How can businesses provide access to people with disabilities? They can begin by opening their doors, literally. Accessible doors welcome everyone, and they are required by law. So let's take a look. Which doors should be accessible? Like all of them. Madison Town Office has, and here's why I'm bringing this up. We all have really great intentions, but something's not connecting. So we've got this great parking lot that goes up to that door that is not accessible. Then we have this one, which is this long rolling ramp for somebody in a wheelchair to get up to the door that has a power assist. And not for nothing, it was a little hard for me to find the button. We have nothing at the gymnasium, and I'll tell you, you may say, oh, well, those doors you should be able to get in through. You can. I was there for 4 hours one morning, watching elderly people with canes trying to come in to see their kids play basketball, not able to open those doors. Parents with strollers can't open the doors. A door cannot use more than 5 pounds of weight to be able to open it. We also have a table that's blocking the check-in. So if you came in a wheelchair, you couldn't reach over to do swipe your pass, and we have doorknobs that are not accessible. Those are, those have been out for 30 years. We have no, at K5, we have no power assist doors with doors that are too heavy. They need to practice independence from the time they're small. So you can't have a child saying, oh, will you please open that door for me? I can't reach the handle. I can't handle that door. I can't get into school, but all my friends can. And even for teachers, you know, a teacher can't get in that door by themselves. We've got public events happening at that Polson Auditorium, and we have a voting location that has no accessible entry. That's
getting done this week. Right, Bill?
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, he's not here, but that was on the plan. It just took a little.
But, you know, 30 years in the making. Okay. These buildings were built before the ADA, and look what they did. You know, that's the cinema, that's that smoothie place. I can't even remember what that place is. But so they've got a level entryway, right? Again, maybe those doors aren't accessible. They're a business. Maybe they put somebody at the door that opens the door. But this building built in 2014 was built with 2 steps. And I don't know why, and nobody seems to know why. Because that's way after the accessibility standard. Yeah. And then you see it says handicap access in the rear. Check this out. You can't access this because if you open this door and you're in a wheelchair and you have to get around the door and maneuver into the serving tray, it can't be done. So we've got issues. This is just briefly, because I said it could be 6 weeks. We've got an ongoing issue of inappropriate language used on town website and press releases. We have an ongoing discrimination by taxpayer-supported volunteer agencies and nonprofits, keeping people with disabilities out of their organizations. So where there's smoke, there's probably fire. So I'm guessing, you know, now that you've seen this quickly, what do you think the message is that we've been sending to our folks with disability and our citizens who think it's okay? Al, you have any?
Well, we're not very welcoming. The examples you showed us or anything but welcoming.
Right, and so I would say it says we're not only not welcoming, but if you get here, we're going to make it darn hard for you to get around, to access services, to be able to enjoy the community like other people do. So here's my recommendation. Training, comprehensive and ongoing staff training for frontline staff, volunteers, and organizations that receive taxpayer money, which the fire department does. And contract for an ADA survey. A trained representative for the ADA.gov can assess the town. Many local disability organizations can do this. This is a resource. Here's another resource. The New England ADA is really great at this. And thank you for the opportunity to share information about making lives better for all citizens of Madison. You know about universal design for living, right? We will retire the sign accessible because everybody will be accessible. So I look forward to hearing your next steps. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. I think one of the things that when I met with Lisa was that, sometimes you just have to look at things through a different set of eyes. And I think that a lot of things that I just took for granted, didn't even pay attention to. I don't think anybody meant, to be disrespectful. It was just more of an issue of it wasn't front of mind for most of, people in town or how we look at things. So I thought it's helpful to kind of step back and look at things, from a different perspective. And so, I think those are, we've tried to work on some of the suggestions you made, and we're in the process of a number of those. But there's more to that, it's about community messaging. And so that was one of the reasons I put on here just as a discussion following. And first of all, do you have a question for Lisa first, and then we can talk to the next
Well, I guess
agenda item?
I
Yeah.
definitely had one question.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no idea that the handicap signs were a problem. I had no idea that it was
Yeah.
created a beggar, but I had no idea that they were an issue. But I guess whose responsibility is that to change them? Is that state mandated when we're 50th? Clearly why we're ranked 50th, but is that a town's responsibility? Is that the state's responsibility?
We do, we're actually, and Bill's not here, but we're planning on changing all our town sides. The school did it in one shot. Bill does both the town and schools. I know the school did it. The town is going to be replacing the signs. He had all the new ones. He was just waiting, New England, wait till the old one wears out and then we'll put the new one in. So we're doing some things like that, but it's interesting to hear that state level conversation because, you're not sure. There's, just, that was a stunning number. I had not known that. We didn't talk about that when we met.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I was in the New Hampshire prison, the men's correctional prison, and I toured where they make the license plates. And I said to him, how long have you been doing, accessible parking? They said, I don't know, a decade. They don't print handicap parking signs. So
What does the state of Connecticut call its license plates?
it's
Do
licensed.
they use
Or the
disability or
tag.
handicap? What?
I don't know. I think it's just the symbol. I think it's the symbol of the wheelchair.
Or like even the name on the application.
That's where,
Yeah, when somebody's getting a tag that they need to have their healthcare provider fill out, what does
It
that?
says, I'll tell you what, I called the DMV recently, and it said, if you want to apply for a handicap
There you
sticker,
go.
So there you go.
welcome to Connecticut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was,
And I think, especially in light of the conversations that we've been having around strategic planning, there is the letter of the law, and then there is the spirit of the law.
And
the message we're sending. I think that as we flesh out our strategic plan, one of our community values should be that we're not going to simply check the box that we comply, that we're living up to the spirit of accessibility. And I think that's really what you've shown us.
Yeah, that,
Is that
you're right on.
There,
Yeah.
this is all compliant. And still falls a little short, so. Listen, Connecticut could be 50th and we could be number one in Madison.
Yeah, I'm
Right,
with you
we
on
could be
that.
the leader.
Game on.
Yeah, yeah.
I think what's scary is these buildings probably are all compliant with the law and functionally not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, I think all the doors are not compliant. You can't have more than 5 pounds of force to open a door, and I know those gym doors are more than 5 pounds.
Those are heavy doors.
Yeah, you can. And that door, the front door there, where I said there's no accessibility, if the wheelchair can get in, it's in a 2-door thing.
yeah.
So how do you get the other door open? So no, it's not legally compliant.
Lisa,
Oh, yes.
have you spoken to John Slifka with the Aging and Disability for the state of Connecticut? Who's federal assistant, he actually is assistant director.
I have not. I know with, and how is he doing? Is it a powered wheelchair?
Yes and no. I've got a lot of meetings with them and walked the building. It's been in wheelchair since he was doing that lab. But I'm saying is he's very, very aggressive. I mean, for us in the town of Madison, we're very fortunate that our dispatch center meets all the national standards for dealing with folks with disabilities and aging. And I think that he's an advocate. So I think I'll share his information with you. You should reach out to him. I think that You know, we're talking about bureaucracy in government, people that are in motor vehicle department, nothing
Yeah.
against them, just
Yeah.
doing what they do. But I think for bringing that presentation you just did, wonderful. I think you should probably sit down with someone like Jonathan Selectmen, who has worked an amazing amount of time and police accountability in dealing with people with disabilities.
Well, that would be great. I would love his contact information. On disability rights in Connecticut, we have a person who's completely deaf. We have people with qualified mental illness and addiction. So we're with PAMI and Demas and the youth services, the preschool to prison pipeline. You know, who's being restrained and who's getting the correct services. It gets. It's.
No, it's a lot. And I think that, you know, to Bruce's point, though, I think there are things that the town can start setting better examples and making goals. And as you know, things take a while sometimes and behaviors have to change. But I think part of our strategic planning effort, and also you talked about some of the things with planning and zoning and requirements, you know, being forward thinking, because we also are dealing with an aging population that is going to be less mobile. And so as our seniors get more immobile as they age, you know, accessibility is critical to government services and just to be able to go shopping and to enjoy downtown and go to the beach. And so I think this is a helpful conversation for us as we create that, you know, forward thinking movement as we go through the strategic planning. And I mentioned you plan of conservation development, which is the planning and zoning document, is also being updated.
Yeah.
And then my thought was just broadening that, because we've also had conversations about diversity in town and equity in town. And we're a town now, so many towns have these diversity, equity, inclusion committees, and that does include people with accessibility issues, disabilities. So it's not just looking at it from a race standpoint necessarily, or gender standpoint, but also looking at it just generally being inclusive in our community of everybody. And so I thought her presentation was a segue into talking about looking into forming one of these committees for the town, because then they can make recommendations and they can come forth and say, you know, in certain areas, the town can do this. Some simple things that Lisa brought up, just looking at our website, you know, making sure the photos are more inclusive of the diversity in our community. And you know, we just don't look at things that way sometimes, and to have others view it and say, making these changes and the types of photos, the way you're presenting the town, it makes it more welcome. So, so I thank you very much for your time and presentation, very helpful. And, you know, we'll be having more of a conversation about this as we go through our strategic planning process. So, thank you for your help.
I will say, like, your comment about we have the signs already. Let's just do it. Like, what are we waiting for at this point? That seems like a layup. Let's just get them done.
Yeah, I'll talk to Bill. I know he started changing them. I think the ones out here, they weren't changed yet. Yeah, no, he did a round of them and then he was going to, they're not, they're still.
Yeah, I have the tag in the car and the thing, the tag goes through the doctor. You won't get the tag without the doctor. It's a form, it's online.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna transition to one.
yeah.
I have my wife's, but it's only good for so long and it's punched. And I think it only has the symbol on it. I don't think it says.
Yeah. Well, and I'll talk to him because I know we.
Don't
talked
drive
about-
around with the expired one. It's $150 fine.
So I think that there are kind of a list of things, so that was obviously one example that we all can see every day. But I think there's a lot of, you know, just thinking things through a little differently. And so just moving on to item number 7, we could put together this kind of committee, which a number of towns have, and then that way we had the Madison Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Committee come to us through, and Jen, you weren't on the board at the time when we've done our Pride Month recognition and flag ceremony and things like that. They're an informal group, they're not a formal part of town. Some of those people are interested in becoming a part of a formal organization. They recommended it last year. And so I think this includes a lot of these different things, right? And so my thought was I can come back with a board, and I think already Jean had sent out some research she had done on DEI committees. And I'll send out like a draft and then we can maybe talk about it. So,
Great.
Does that
Sounds amazing.
sound good?
Yes.
And then we can get some kind of feedback if we set this committee up on different ways we can include things in town, so. Okay, great, so, next item on the agenda is a totally radically different conversation. Discuss the current fund balance and potential budget related appropriation, so.
Yeah, that's a hard pivot to make.
I know. The board received in its packet, a sheet that kind of lays out, the, amount of money we have in our, everybody undesignated fund balance. And we've been using the undesignated fund balance, and this is not, the town has a requirement to keep, at least 10% of its budget as a rainy day fund. So people hear the rainy day fund. We have approximately $21 million right now in our rainy day fund, but we're only required and need to keep 10% according to our regulations, which is try to look at the numbers here. Yeah, no, so it's, wait, on this sheet, the amount that we're required to keep.
8.8 million.
Yeah, 8.8 million. So, and then if you look at different scenarios, that's kind of the baseline. That's what our regulation requires. And then there's kind of a best practice that a lot of communities use, and that is holding 1.5 months of operating expenditures, which is roughly 13%. So that would mean we need to hold about 10.5 million as our fund balance. And then there's an even further example of, which I think the rating agencies even love more, and that's holding about 2 months of operating. And so this ultimately is a decision that the Board of Finance would make about how much we want to keep as our rainy day fund. And then we still have a lot of funding on top of that. And so for the public's benefit, why do we have that money? Well, we have to project our revenue every year. And sometimes we collect more and we're usually very conservative in our projections for those revenues. Because some of them are unreliable, some of them are possible for, grants, there's things from the state, and we've seen the times that the state in the budget cycle may not follow through with some of the things that are discussed earlier in the session. And then we also kind of have a conservative estimate on our tax revenues. So we assume that we're going to collect less than what we actually collect. Madison has a very high collection rate, and we're fortunate with that. But it allows us to build up a buffer so that if we do have like a rapid change in the economy or an event where the collection rate would be lower, we still have a buffer built into that. And then at the end of the year, if we don't spend everything in the budget, the money goes back into the undesignated fund balance. And there's a lot of times at the end of the year, money comes back into the undesignated fund balance. So because you're forecasting once again, you thought something was going to cost so much, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we ended up getting a good deal on it or whatever. We didn't need all that money. So that extra money goes back into the fund balance. And this has been a practice for years, is going through and using some of that extra money to help fund, things that come up during the middle of the year that we need to fund that aren't part of the budget. And then we've been using that a lot for some of these grant programs as well. So the board has a list in front of them of what we've already had a lot of conversations about. And then there's 2 items that we are potentially going to be discussing. So that's the police department special appropriation of 70,000, and then the communications tower maintenance one. And then we've talked about the CIP recommendation, the post resiliency, all these ones listed. These are all part of the budgeting process that we've been talking about. And then down below are items that we know we need to commit to because of some grants we received. So I guess I'm kind of talking on here. So I guess I'm going to turn it over to the board discussion now. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on.
So a couple hypotheticals.
Yep.
If we were to approve all of the uses, the $8.1 million tonight, this is hypothetical, right?
Go for the goal.
How much of this money could actually be spent in the upcoming fiscal year? How shovel ready is all of this? So a lot of it is, right? Because a lot of it's just putting money into balances, and I'm sure Jack could spend all the money tomorrow that he's asking for.
I was looking at the weather.
I know, I caught you. And I think the follow through on raising it that way is what isn't in this schedule, and I appreciate that it's not part of it, is that the organic replenishment that happens to this fund. This got to be so large because it is every year consistently getting money put into it. And if we look back over history, last 5 or 6 years, reliably, it's over $1 million. Conservatively, we could factor in about 750,000 a year. And so even in this third column, if we were to designate the money, but we weren't able to physically actually spend it all, by this time next year, there'd be enough money in it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I guess I look at it as, we are committed to some of this, right? There's no, and as we've seen, a lot of projects have come in over budget because of the inflationary environment. And so, we put these earmarks and say, we're gonna probably need these from the fund balance to pay for a project, but then lo and behold, and we've seen this with the downtown center project, which is dragged on for 15 years, right? Where there's always like, oh, a problem comes up and this happens, we're gonna have to do this, and then the bids come back and they're much higher than what we had forecasted at. So I always feel like you want to keep, room to make sure that at least the projects you're committed to and you have grants to, you can get them done, right? And that there's extra reserve there to help out if the projects, hit unforeseen types of.
So I think
Can
that's
I-
fair. I think that's a fair.
Yeah, because I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Non-finance guy question. So for the public's benefit too,
Yeah.
if this money just continues to grow, continues to sit here, are we accruing interest
Yes.
on the money?
Some, but
What's the rate?
I'll get a real number. Yeah.
Yes, so for 6 months of this current fiscal year, we earned $900,000.
right,
So that's real money.
Yeah.
right. It is real money that is not accruing in
I
our
bet.
collective
I bet.
retirement accounts. So this is an over collection of taxes.
That's
right.
Yeah.
We have arrived here for very good reasons. The problem isn't our conservative budgeting practices. I think
Well, it's probably both.
the gap here for me is that we've collected the money and we're not doing anything with it.
Well,
And if
no,
we're-
but now we are doing a lot with it. I think we went from doing very little, and now we have this big pipeline of a lot going on,
Right, so
right? So I
under the
feel like,
current regulations,
right,
to your good point
Mhm.
about making sure that we don't completely run out, because the 10% is for emergencies. The big wave comes and washes away a good part of Madison, that money is there to reconstruct that, right? The contingency money that you're talking about, we would not dip into that.
no,
reserve
we
fund.
can't, that has
right?
gotta be for a true
Right,
emergency.
right,
So-
so.
That's
so
by
the i-
regulation too. We can't.
The idea of keeping some reserve aside, I think is a good one. It's appropriate. Under the current regulations, if again, hypothetically, we were to approve all of these spends, we'd have $4.4 million left over, would be over 5 million next year. So we're not,
Right, but as it stands today, we're at 12.5 or whatever the number is. We're
Yeah.
it's significant
right,
today, right now.
today, right now, right? And the rules of the game today are 10% reserve. Everything else it's undesignated, means it has no purpose. So I think it's up to us to give it a purpose.
I think that's what we've been doing. That's why there's this long list of recommendations,
this
right?
is-
Yeah,
This is great,
yeah,
but
yeah. So this is the list of things that we think make sense, because I think we're always keeping the eye towards what's coming up in the future, right? And trying to set ourselves up for the future so that we can manage the budget. To not have a lot of budget inflation or budget growth, that we can kind of manage it through these special appropriations.
right, Chris, taking the 3.5 million and putting it into the capital fund allows us the flexibility to draw down contributions to that fund in future years while we experience some of the increased debt payments that we're gonna have because of the $89 million that we approved. I think that just makes sense, right? It's a strategic decision to avoid increasing taxes in the future. Makes sense. The pension contribution, exact same thing. It's an investment today that avoids having to collect new tax dollars in the future. I think, you know, the investment in the Coastal Resiliency Fund just makes sense. I mean, most of that work will get funded out of grants and CIP and stuff like that, but they need some base funding to get some of their work done. So I don't see any project in here that says, no, we shouldn't do it.
I mean, you could, in theory, make the argument of any of these projects as it relates to CIP too, right? I mean, some of these are CIP, some are not, and some haven't flowed through the 5-year planning process that we put in place too. So I think we've got to be, you know, I'm going back to the conversation we had last week in our workshop, which is, you know, we got to be cognizant of some of these upcoming areas of spend too. We can't just open up the checkbook, go from 0 to 100 and suddenly just spend it all too. I don't think that's responsible either. So I think we got to be a little careful.
So I guess.
So how much is, okay, so let's
I don't know the answer.
let's talk about what is the
Yeah.
reserve? Is it 5 million? Is it 1 million? It's not 12, right?
Above and beyond the 10%.
Right, yeah.
Well, and that's where I think that's a Board of Finance.
That's a Board of Finance decision.
Decision, so it's their regulation. I know they've been thinking about possibly changing the regulation or at least giving direction on what they feel is the best buffer.
That's
And
the
that's
two
why we
options
have,
here, right?
that's why we have the three options. The one is the 10% is the, you know, stay steady as we go, stay with the same regulation. The middle one is kind of like, you know, let's scroll in a little bit more, just some extra cushion there, and it's also would be good, because remember, we're gonna be going out to bonds the next couple of years every year. And reserves are part of that calculation that they look at, what we have in our undesignated fund balance, and so the more that's there, it will just give more cushion to the rating agencies, right? And then we have the full-on 2 months of operating, and Stacy, if you want to comment, I mean, do a lot of communities have that? I mean, that's a pretty big number.
That the 2 months is a rating agency preferred amount, and that's nationwide.
And that's
So
for
they-
communities that rely on outside funding,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So very
it's kind
few,
of
if any,
unfair.
do it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Very few, if any, do the 17%.
That I can't comment on. I don't really know what, other towns or states do. But I can say that Connecticut, their revenue is pretty reliable taxes. Other states are not. So that's why it's nationwide by Fitch and Moody's.
And I think also to your point, though, that Connecticut town budgets rely mostly on property taxes. A lot of other states have, you
Yeah.
know,
They have
county
to-
government, they have other
Yeah.
things, yeah. So
It's
they
not
have other,
sales taxes,
right.
it's not.
yeah. It's they have other forms of revenue, and if they're relying on outside sources, that's, as we know, the more you rely on state or federal aid, the more at risk you are in terms of what your revenue stream is gonna be.
Remind the public and me, what's the benefit of the AAA rating? Like, what are we getting as a town? Are we getting a particular interest rate benefit? Are we, what is that benefit?
Well,
It's interest, favorable interest.
yeah, we get we pay less to borrow. You know, and for a long time, actually, the last 5 years, it wasn't that big of a difference between a AAA and a AA. When you start seeing the credit markets tighten, when you see the economy going down, then when you start seeing that spread widen a little bit more. So, so the AAA is going to help us as we go into bonding because the spread is widening. If you asked like a year and a half ago, it was not maybe a quarter of a basis, or something like that, like 25 basis points. So it wasn't a big difference. But I think right now it's going to help us, you know, to sustain that AAA credit rating.
The wisdom of our charter is that it takes both boards, finance and selectmen, to spend money. But as I understand, only the Board of Finance under their regulations, sets these reserve targets. Is that correct, Stacy?
Right now.
We, the selectmen, don't make a determination as to
What the
what the
guardrails
fund
are.
balance should be.
Yeah, these regulations are Board of Finance.
So until do we know what, if they're about to change this 10%? I mean, it seems to me it impacts what we're going to do here if they're about to make a change.
I don't necessarily want to say they're going to make a change. There's been a lot of discussions about changing their goal. I don't know if they officially will want to change the regulation itself. But this has been the discussion, kind of like the median point that they've talked about over numerous meetings. But they have not.
And quite frankly, over numerous boards, because this conversation's been going on
Yeah.
since
For
2015. as
Since
far
the
as
regulation started, probably.
Right, and I completely respect the Board of Finance saying we want to increase the reserve, right? And picking a number, that's their ball field,
Yeah.
and they can do that. They
When
haven't
you
yet
say
done-
reserve though, is that the regulation itself or is that above the regulation?
Well, so they would modify the existing regulation from 10% to something else. Okay.
Which is like.
New regulation.
And so whatever they want to do, I think it is. That's on them to figure out, and I would respect whatever they wanted to do. What we have and have had in front of us for as long as I've been involved is 10%. What we've heard
With
of
the number growing.
well, the undesignated fund balance this is historically large. This is historically large, and again, I think through very, very good budget making assumptions on the revenue side. I don't, I fully support why we are.
And good budgeting too, because we
We
do-
return money.
Yeah.
Right.
We return money and we do special appropriations to help out the budget, but it's not that much. I
No, it
mean,
isn't.
Our departments do a very good job at forecasting what their needs, so there's not a lot of operational needs. Except unusual circumstances, things that pop up they couldn't foresee, so. That's when we typically see like a department requesting a special appropriation.
But the Board of Finance has a regulation, it's 10%, we know what that number is, we know what the difference is. I think that it's up to us to figure out what is a good way to deploy those taxpayer dollars to the benefit of the community.
So
I
what
like
are
kind of
we
where you were
trying to
going.
accomplish tonight?
Yeah.
Right.
One of there's a couple, because as you look at this list, right, there's a series, we're gonna be voting on some appropriations later on this,
Some are.
that are on this list. And that really kind of tie in with, our budget, right? Then we talked about in our budget workshop, we passed a budget. And some of these appropriations are gonna need to happen in order to make the budget work. There's also one topic on here, we can maybe move on to item number 9. Discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation into the fireman's pension benefit fund pending Board of Finance and town meeting approval. This is the one that there was another use of the funds. And there was a discussion of a range from anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million at the Board of Finance, and they've tabled this discussion. That's also on your list, right? So it shows you, if we do everything that we're planning to do because of the budget, plus do the pension, where are we? My thinking on it is and I guess, somebody needs to move, sorry, the conversation, I just,
Oh, I'll motion. Sure. So moved.
we're moving on to number 9, right? Okay,
So moved.
okay, all right,
Now we're
so
discussing.
now we're discussing it. So as we know, as we look at this, that we can absorb anywhere from 500 to $1.5 million to go into the pension. Just for the public's benefit, we made some changes to the fireman's pension last year to improve their benefits, which were well needed and well deserved. It hadn't been touched since the 1990s, so it was the right thing to do. And now we just got to figure out how do we make sure that we can pay those obligations in the future, and we will pay those. We will always meet our obligations. But one thing is to take some of this money that we now have in the undesignated fund balance and put it into the pension so that they can invest it now and start earning a return. So that'll save money for future budgets that we don't have to put into the pension. And so I know there was just, I think, a little bit of mixed feelings about how much that number should be.
Hang on, so, but in number 9, we're not talking about that, right?
Yeah.
Number 9 is
No,
just,
9 is the
10.
fireman's pension benefit.
but I thought 10 was that confusion, right, that we talked about? So there's two. There's two
It
different.
was.
One to take care of this year.
One is to take care of this year.
One is to take care of this year.
Yeah, so I think 9 is not.
One is to take care of the next 18 months.
Oh, we didn't put the number in the other one. I'm sorry, so number 10 is
What's this
for,
gonna
yeah, we didn't, it depends on, yeah, sorry. Now we're going on to the next thing, so, there's a one-off and, infusion into the pension fund, and then there's a reserve account that we would set up through a special appropriation to make the budget work. And that's right, because we didn't put a number in, because how much you put in one depends on what you do in the other, so that's why I got a little,
But we have to put a number in 9,
huh?
is that what we're saying?
Well, I think we need to decide what we wanted, and we can talk about it under 9, and then we would adjust the appropriation numbers. Right now, we don't have to put anything into the pension fund. To get the benefits for future budget, we would need to do it by June 30th, okay? So that's direct infusion into the pension fund. What we do need to do now, in the middle of the budget process, is do the, item 10. Because that is basically setting up a reserve account, right? And Stacy, remind me the number of choices. It's
So there's 4, I just passed out.
it's on the next page, right? Yeah.
So the first page in the handout is what the actuarial determined contribution would be year over year. Scenario 1 would be an infusion, or actually the first column would be an infusion of 0. That's what our budget would change year over year. Scenario 1 would be an infusion of 500,000. 2 is 750, and 3 is 1.5 million. So this front page came from our actuaries.
And this is just the infusion into the pension fund.
This is what the budget, the annual determined
Right.
contribution would look like with the different scenarios. Yes, with an infusion of just an infusion into the pension fund. This has nothing to do with the reserve account yet.
Right.
That's where we're gonna go into.
And
next.
that's why there's a 0 in this year's budget in terms of, it's not gonna help us this year. So if we do an infusion, it
Either
won't
of
help our
the
budget.
3 scenarios, because it's a value as of 7/1/22, that will not help next year's budget. So there's 2 things we're talking about. 1, infusion into the pension plan, which will help all of the next 19 years of contributions. However, those contributions are going up because of the change. So the second thing that we need to talk about is a special appropriation. Put money aside in a reserve account to offset the budget impact over the next few years, so we don't have that impact on our mill rate that in turn would be transferred to the.
Right. So where the 2 motions do touch each other is if we make a commitment for the 1.5,
Mhm.
our reserve account is 135,000. If we make a commitment for less than that, then that reserve account has to be larger.
Right, but I think that for this year, we have to do 135. So that's the one that is gonna help us in any scenario,
In
right?
any of the
Yeah.
3
The base
scenarios,
is 130.
Right.
the base is 135.
And so, and that's if you go to the next page on this?
No, there.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So it'll show you, see, 135 is the first year for 2023-24. So we need to do the 135 special appropriation, no matter what we do with the pension infusion.
And
And
you
then I
said,
think we can come back and add to that reserve if we end up going with 500. But if we go with 1.5 million, then we don't have to do
Any other reserve
right,
funding.
any other reserve funding. So I think that, like, my thinking is tonight is to do what we feel are the right for the budget as it is, and then we agree that we're going to have further conversations and also see with the Board of Finance, because they tabled this. So I would hate for us to go in one direction and pick something specifically on this issue, because I know there were a lot of different views on the Board of Finance. And so let them sort it through, and then they can make the recommendation to us on the pension.
I kind of like getting the consultation from the Board of Finance on this, in the sense that to some extent, that's their role. I mean, shouldn't they be giving us sort of the guardrails and how we should be thinking about this? I'd like to see their input first, and so maybe I guess I'm rethinking what I said in the workshop, but I think getting the base in place and then getting the input and then deciding with a more informed decision, we can make a kind of a better.
And we could do
Thoughtful
that,
decision.
because they'll be talking, they're in their budget workshops in May, and then they're actually meeting or in March, meeting mid-March, and then we could have this on our agenda at the end of March. So then we would know where the budget came out. We would know what their thinking is,
Yeah.
what might have crystallized at that point on the pension, and then we'll put it as an agenda item for the end of March for us. And we may, maybe we disagree with what they recommend. We'll see, but I think I'd like to give them the opportunity to come to an agreement, because we have to get through them too, right? So.
Well, and I like knowing that whatever our decision is, it doesn't need to be in place until June 30th for us to get the full benefit. That was my concern at our last meeting, is I didn't want us to lose ground on something,
Right.
Financially for the town, but if we could still have the full benefit with the decision in on June 30th, then sure, let's get the other information. I think that makes sense. Because the other piece of it is too, with looking at what our fund balance percentage is, 10%, 13%, 17%. If the Board of Finance hasn't come up with that determination yet, we really don't know what our remaining unassigned is gonna be.
Exactly.
And then what are we comfortable with?
It changes considerably, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but that's a great point. When do we say, okay, if they haven't changed the 10%
Right.
by this date, we're assuming that that's the number.
And I think that's
well,
a
we've
very
got to do
fair
something about it,
question, yeah, because we can only make decisions based off of the information that we have. And then if they do decide to change, at what point does that go into effect? Is that an immediate change, or is that a year out change? How does that?
Well, and I think though, but they could also decide not to change the regulation,
Right.
because that gives them flexibility, right? But they could also say, but our preference is to sustain a balance of this amount.
Which I think is where they
It
were.
is, yeah,
were
which I think
leaning,
is,
yeah.
they're leaning in
Not
that
change the
direction.
regulation.
I don't think so, but don't forget, we need to still go to town meetings, so if we
Right.
can make a decision in May, so that I have time to get the pension plan, the money in June.
Right,
We have to go
right.
through
So we,
both boards and.
well, and then we'll know how the budget passed too, so we could do it as part of,
It's a good idea.
but I think,
Well,
and I'm just thinking what we could do then on, item 9 is we could agree to table item 9 till the, last meeting in March. And then we can just vote on the 135 in item number 10. And I can read that motion, and that way we're at least securing what we need to match the budget that we passed, because we need that 135 in order to support the budget that we passed.
Right, I think the devil's advocate in me, the troublemaker in me, says we are talking about the Board of Finance hypothetically raising their reserve, right? We're not arguing that it's their role and right to do it. Completely is. We have baked into the budget a $3.5 million special appropriation for the CIP. What if they raise the reserve to the point where that $3.5 million isn't available?
So but that discussion has been going on for a while. We've been presented the Madison investment plan. I mean, that has been going on since the fall. The pension discussion just came this last meeting and they were split, I don't think the board, and I'm just.
Split, it was 4 against 1, I think.
Oh, yeah, let's do the $1.5 million. So I'm just saying, yeah. So it wasn't split, but clearly there is a desire. I think everybody wants to do something with the pension, right? It's just a question of the number. And I'm
I'd still want
supportive
my
of doing
taxes going
something.
up $200,000 a year
Yeah.
for the next 19
Yeah.
years. Right
I
out of the
mean-
gate. I mean, if, and that's the impact to the out years
Mhm.
is,
Right.
it's a 200, before we've done anything else in town government, spending goes up $200,000.
But I think today, we have the opportunity to look each other in the eyeballs and say, listen, let's come back to this and let's get some additional input. Let's come back to this and make some additional decisions. And commit to each other to do that.
And I'm committed to having it on the March agenda after the Board of Finance meets. So they may vote on this next meeting, they may not, but at least we'll have that the benefit of that, and it will be on.
So can we request them to deal with it? Like, can we, you know?
I think
we've done that in the past with signal.
I don't think Fillmore is gonna let this go away, so. And they'll also, they're just starting their budget workshops too, so they've got to go, we went through our process of looking at all of this and the budget and they haven't had the benefit of doing that yet, so. I think their March meeting, they'll have more of their thinking flushed out probably by then. And, you know, they may or may not take action, but remember, we have to agree on something or else we're just gonna go back and forth.
Yeah.
With the number.
Yeah.
So,
Right, yeah, ultimately, we have to agree. Hopefully, once they've set their number, they would respect the way we want to operationally
Right.
deploy the money.
yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're doing with the other appropriations on here, right? That's going with the budget package. Which is where I think it is more appropriate than to vote on those tonight, because we're saying, you know, these go with the budget. If you don't pass these appropriations, then the numbers don't work in the budget, so. So with that, I guess we can agree to table, right, item number 9.
Good.
And then item number 10 is I would like to amend item number 10 to say discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation of $135,000. To assign fund balance for the fireman's pension reserve account pending Board of Finance approval.
So move.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? No? And Stacy, you're good with that?
Yeah.
Yep, okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then furthering on, discuss and take action to approve the following special appropriation pending Board of Finance and town meeting approval. A, radar speed signs for the police department, $34,547. Stalker radar sets, vehicle mounted dual antenna, $13,023. Capital improvement program technology fund, $100,000. Capital improvement program CNRE fund, $3.5 million. And then capital improvement program CRF, $100,000. So that's right, the coastal resiliency fund.
So move.
Second.
Okay, and this is basically all those that we talked through the budget plus the $3.5 million that CIP also did recommend that we do to make our plan work over the next couple of years. So this is saving some money, putting some money aside in a savings account so that as the debt comes on in future budgets, we can lower what we put into capital and it'll smooth everything out.
So I'd like to request that we pull D out of this particular vote. I mean, what I'd like to do is vote for the other, vote in favor of the other ones and vote against this one. For the same reason that we're deferring the decision until the Board of Finance lands on a reserve number, that we know that we have the money to do it. That's a lot of money.
You are making then actually a motion to amend item number 11 to exclude item D.
Sure, we can do that. Yeah, yes.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm fine voting this stuff. So all in favor, say aye. Aye, okay. So now can we vote on item number 11 as amended? Okay.
That's excluding, that's excluding.
Right, and so
Right, but then I'm gonna make a motion to approve I would like.
A, B, C, and D.
Okay, now, a motion to approve, item A, B, C, and E. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right, so we passed those items. Now I would like to make a motion.
I think you have to.
Oh, can I, motion to open the agenda, please?
So
moved.
Okay, second,
Second.
okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, open up the agenda to add item D, I guess is what I'm doing, right? I'm doing all this. All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve a special appropriation into the capital improvement program CNRE fund of $3.5 million pending Board of Finance and town meeting approval. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion. So I still think it's important to send the signal that we support this, and I do wholeheartedly support the $3.5 million. And I'd like to just, it's part of our, it came through from CIP too. So, and it's part of a plan that this, we've been working on since the fall. And so I would like to approve it tonight.
And I think it is a great use of the money. But I would like to use this vote just to send a message to the Board of Finance that they need to be consistent in their logic. That spending the 3.5 million now to avoid tax increases in the future is brilliant, right? It's the same logic for the 1.5 million that they tabled before.
But
And
I
if it
think,
works for one, why doesn't it work for both?
because I think the whole CIP plan for the next 5 years is dependent on having that infusion done. So if we didn't do the 3.5 million, we would.
We would have to fund it. We would have to fund it through taxes.
Well, yeah, we'd have to figure out a way to fund it, but I think, I don't know, I think that's a little different than, this is something we've been working on several months. We've had multiple meetings on, so I'm just more comfortable.
I get it, I
Okay.
get it, understand,
Well,
I'm
we just get to vote. We
deliberately
have
trying
to-
to send a message here, right?
Right,
So,
right.
so it's baked into the CIP to make the numbers work and avoid tax increases.
Right.
If we don't approve, if ultimately the Board of Finance doesn't align with 1.5 million, presuming that we do, which
Well,
is
that's
still,
what I'm
is still
saying.
another
That's
vote,
what-
right?
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I feel like we're tying this all to,
If we,
and they should be separate
if we don't
conversations.
do that, the minimum increase we're gonna see for the next 18 years is
Right.
about $200,000.
See, I guess where I come down on this is, I feel like I can make the same exact argument for why we should do it. For the CNRE 3.5, sending a message to the Board of Finance that this is the right way to fund it. And that maybe that sets the example and or the precedent to push for the 1.5 because we're suggesting this is the right way to do it.
Right, so I expect this to be a 4-1 vote. Don't,
We're not gonna
get me wrong.
So,
I don't,
okay, all right, well, we'll call the vote then. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, opposed? One opposed. Okay, great. Okay, that's fine. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, it's what we gotta do, so.
Yep.
All right, so moving on, oh my God, this is gonna be a late night. Discuss, ARPA balance and potential town projects.
do you want us to go to your email or the packet?
Well, I think the packet, and then, the. Do you have copies? Yeah, that would be great. I think just,
Hard to pull up on my phone.
This is just the balance of all the projects. that are-
did you give me an art?
That's right. Easy things.
I didn't have that one. Yeah, this.
I know. This is not very good.
All right, oh, wait. Okay, yeah. So, this is before we talk about projects, wanted to, just so you can see, right now, our balance after our last meeting, because we had voted to add some funds back, $640,541 is in the ARPA fund account. And I also had sent around a memo from Austin about another project that we thought might be ARPA worthy that the town had. We didn't formally put it in. He's exploring the options right now, but it has to do with the town tennis courts. And I wanted to flag that because you're gonna be going through and making decisions on a number of other pending applications. So I just wanted you to keep that in mind. Unfortunately, that project could wipe out the whole balance, right? If we did the full court, but there's also some other things that we might want to do that at least makes them playable. We unfortunately have been living with repairs forever on these courts, and there's some options that are not the full 600, but that might offer. So we might want to keep that in mind as a buffer as we vote on some of the other projects. So that's, so you have the balance of how much money essentially we have, and then if it's good, we'll just move on to, and you saw the memo on the, just remind me, Austin, the range. So the top end redoing all the courts was 600 and something, right?
Top end doing all the courts, like
Brand new,
blowing them up,
right.
brand new everything, is 650,000.
Right.
Doing a it's called right way crack repair. So it's an infusion of a repair mechanism, prevents the current cracks from expanding, and that's about 65,000. And the third option would be doing the right way crack repair, touching up the color on only the areas that this repair would be done, and touching up the lines only in the area that the repair is done, rather than repainting the entire surface area and relining the tennis courts and pickleball courts.
So what was that with the,
That's 35.
right, 35? So those are the ranges if we wanted to use ARPA funding, and we just thought we.
That was not in CIP, it's not been in CIP.
Well, it's been a placeholder in CIP for a long time, and we actually kind of said, oh, we can just do some crack repairs and stuff, which is what he did last year, and they're already back. So we're realizing now there's some major problems with the courts.
Hmm.
We were hoping that would carry us a couple of years. But evidently,
When you do these repairs, it's a Band-Aid,
There's no warranty.
no warranty.
Yeah.
So like the $35,000 and $65,000 options are essentially what we've already done, but it's only lasted.
It's a
one year.
different type of repair.
this is,
Different type of
yeah, this is
repair,
what, last year we
This is a
spent. how
more
much?
intensive repair operation.
Okay.
than what we did. Last year, we had sinkholes and cracks.
Mhm.
They were filled with concrete, sanded, painted over.
Okay.
This is a different mechanism to repair them, which should, in theory, last, 3 years.
Okay.
But everything we're doing besides tearing them up and putting brand new ones down is a Band-Aid that gets us, X amount of years down the road.
Mhm.
Does it make sense to Band-Aid them until the new courts at the high school are done? And then do a comprehensive repair?
Absolutely, it would be foolish we cannot shut the courts down for the full year while the Polson courts are being done, because nobody would have anywhere to play.
Mhm.
My recommendation would be to repair them for this season. And then make a choice as to what we want to do.
Mhm.
You have to overlap.
Yeah.
So,
Austin, between these three options, between options 1 and 2. You,
It's between 1 and 2, the only difference is aesthetic, what it's gonna look like, not how it's gonna play. So
well, we got a tough crowd in Madison, so.
so you'll see down there
Because we're
now,
painting them.
where the new, on
Yeah.
the tennis court side where the cracks were repaired, you'll see there's a color difference between the repaired areas and the old areas.
Yeah.
That's what all of it will look like. It'll be like a patchwork system. It will not affect play. The lines will be perfectly visible for everybody who's playing. So it's,
But,
the difference between 1 and 2 is just purely aesthetic.
but if they're not gonna be doing high school tournaments on those courts, though, right? Because the courts are getting done outside of the season.
Correct.
I
So
don't
it's
know.
town use then.
Town campus is
Yeah.
fully town, public use, recreation department programming.
Right.
Mhm.
But we could be sitting here for 2 or 3 years with it looking that way, right?
Yep.
So,
I'm comfortable with the $64,000 option. It just seems like it's just a better way to go
Yeah.
in the short term. Are you looking for us to add that into the list of ARPA? or-
if you guys are comfortable doing it, he didn't do a formal, request, but you got the memo explaining it, so. I think we could add that, as we go through and just add it as the first project that we approve, and then we can go through the rest. I just wanted to flag it before you start
Right.
parceling everything out. So if we did 60, 65, then I guess, basically, I'll amend item number 14. Or no, or do we just want to do it now? Can I make a motion to open up the agenda to add item 12A?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Great, okay, I'd now like to make a motion to approve an amount of up to $65,000 of ARPA funds for the town campus tennis court repair project pending Board of Finance approval.
So moved.
Second.
Is that correct?
So I'm just looking at, doesn't that send us into the negative?
Well, it depends on what we decide on, these.
Okay, so you're expecting us now to we'll go down and pick down the list.
Right.
Okay,
I'm putting this in a hat,
that's fine. Okay, that's fine. Just,
but like, because I think it's kind of
We're
critical.
pre-spending.
Yeah, it's gonna be kind of critical to get this done.
Well, it
So,
impacts a lot of residents.
yeah, it
That's-
does, and it's a
that's
safety issue and it needs to be fixed, so.
It's annoying, yeah.
So, with that, all in favor, of the item 12A, say aye. Aye, okay, great. So you can get your repairs going, because I know this is critical time to get these guys locked up right now.
It's gonna take some time, there's weather and temperature constraints that you have to meet for this project, and when they put
Yeah.
shovel in the ground,
Mhm.
yeah, we can get started.
Great, okay,
Is it indicative?
So at that dollar amount, we do have to go out to the.
next item then is discuss and take action to approve the Daniel Hand High School stage lighting project funding source from the undesignated fund balance to ARPA round 14 fund totaling $120,000.
So move.
I'll second.
Okay, so this was basically at the Board of Finance meeting, we had approved the project, but we had assumed it was gonna be fund balance. They thought this was better use under ARPA. I explained that we didn't have a lot of time to converse about this, because this kind of came at the last minute, and I wasn't sure where we were on all these other projects, so. But they went ahead and did that. So it's now, the town meeting's done, so we kind of have to do this, because needs to get his contract on, out of ARPA.
Did they say why they wanted it in ARPA?
I think they just like the fit better, I think, they didn't have the benefit of the pipeline, and at the time I thought, well, I mean,
It's a project into undesignated fund balance, it's just swapping
yeah,
payments.
exactly,
Okay,
yeah, I know,
Pick one funding
I.
source or the other, right?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah, so, and to their point, and ARPA has to get done more quickly, obviously, because we have a time constraint on ARPA, this is gonna be going out and getting done soon. The high school lighting project too, so that's another thing, some projects aren't gonna qualify for ARPA, because we wouldn't actually be spent all the money by 2026, right?
we'll
So,
spend all.
yeah.
Bruce guarantees.
I'm pretty comfortable there.
So any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, great.
Do you have, well, we don't, it's under 150,000, we don't have to call a town meeting for it, do we?
Well, we don't, because it's ARPA. ARPA, we never
ARPA's
do
different.
town meetings, since it's a
Okay.
grant,
There's a benefit to doing it.
yeah, so it was. a
Well, we have a
grant.
town meeting tonight.
I know, we had a town meeting tonight, that's why I was like.
But you pulled it off. Yeah.
I just, you know what, we had two people, Justin and Katie were on the ARPA committee too, so they were like, well, this is, we helped with Madison, lyric stage, this makes sense, so.
All good.
Okay, item number 14, and, well, this is where. I guess the question is, we want to go, discuss each project, I think. So I'll move each project, how about? Okay, and then we can handle them one by one. So, discuss and take action to approve additional ARPA round 14 funding requests for the Madison Little League Nelson Fields lighting CIP approved request of $220,000.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? I mean, this was vetted by CIP. We obviously, and the great thing is they're kicking in $100,000 as part of the matching of the project, so.
Terrific.
And
So-
yeah.
travel baseball, if you guys heard of doing the same
Yeah.
thing. This project, I will say factually, since I was president of the Little League, has been on the docket trying to go through the process, so
So,
it's
but
well overdue.
well, the paperwork we have says that it was submitted for year 5, which suggests it's a new submission.
So,
This particular version of it,
yeah,
but some of the conduit was actually put in when we were there, when they did the circle, when they actually.
it kind of fell out of CIP for a while because people thought it's just never gonna happen. And then, CIP felt it should be our decision to, because they were kind of hinting like use ARPA, but they just wanted to stick to their process, put projects in year 5. They didn't want an extra outside group coming in in year 1, so. That was.
So this
the thought.
isn't jumping the line on some other project.
No.
Okay. so
Not
that's-
really. It's been around for a long time. I think it just fell off the radar a little bit because of other priorities. So,
So it's so it's a little bit, it's confusing to see that it was introduced as a year 5 project.
right.
Okay.
I think that was what the committee felt was
Definitely
the
not
right
a
thing to
year
do.
project based on historical.
And that was a big discussion in CIP
Around a
as
long
well.
time.
So they really did. And they also said they would support it getting moved up if there were other funding sources.
Mhm.
So, that was a big conversation that CIP had. So, and who's on CIP for? Al. Al,
I am.
yeah.
Oh, and me.
Oh, yeah, because Noreen, we didn't have the benefit of the conversations, but you recall that
That's
there
right.
was a big part of the conversation.
The fact that they were gonna be able to fund part of it on their own.
Yeah, they thought that pulls it up too.
Really
'cause
impressed.
It's like a grant, right? We get a grant and we pull the project up in the pipeline, so.
Silly
Alright.
question.
Which doesn't happen every day.
Is it a LED lighting project?
Good question. I don't know the details of the lights. It will have to be,
Like-
Austin, do you know?
It should be.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it would be,
Is that kind of standard operating procedure for us these days?
Yes.
yeah. Okay, well, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, that passes. If any folks from Little League still there, they'll be happy to hear that. Okay,
Should make them last.
all right, yeah, right. All right, discuss and take action to approve additional ARP-14 funding request from the Scranton Library, creative lock tools request of $10,000.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and then this was one, the library did receive ARPA funds already, so I just wanted to highlight that. It was a nominal amount of $3,500. This is one that it's really, it seems to fit with, community, outreach and, I guess, the question is, this seems to fall into the spirit of what the committee had been awarding, correct, Al?
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any additional questions on this one.
It seemed in reading the narrative from them that this was still not getting them the makerspace equipment that they had hoped for when they built the library, that they're still short on equipment. And I'm not sure that it's especially relevant to the $10,000, but it's disappointing that they haven't been able to.
As I remember, Bruce, this was for specifically that upstairs room that they call the creative loft.
Right, I'm using makerspace as
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was obviously smaller kinds of things. Anyway, the ARPA committee thought it was exactly in line with what the
Yeah.
funds were supposed to be used for.
This was just something that they had tabled, pushed to us,
Yeah.
because they were, yeah. So, any other questions on that? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, great.
Stacy, you keeping score?
Yes, that's why I was just gonna give you the balance. Now we're at 225.
Nice.
Wait, what?
No.
Oh,
If we take out from the 640.
oh, the 120,
We
yeah,
take out 65, 10 and 220. And the 120, we're at 225,000.
okay. Okay, so the next one on here is, I'd like to make a motion to approve our round 14 funding request from the Madison Youth Soccer. What is MYF, Madison Youth Football? It sounds like I'm like, football portable LED lighting request of $179,991. Maybe that's a second.
So do we have enough information on this one to even vote?
Yeah,
I'd give you some-
well, can we second my motion, or do we want to just? Sorry, we could also, yes, we can talk about it. Okay, so this is a little complicated right now. I think we all recognize we need to do some lighting, and assist them. Austin, if you want to explain a little bit about the conversations with the
Sure.
Greenfield.
Thank you. So, both youth soccer and Madison youth football currently use diesel powered lighting systems at both Exchange and Lower Town campus. Those systems are loud, they smell, and they don't provide optimum lighting situation at those fields.
You're talking to 5 politicians that use the same one, I think, at election time.
So, the plan would be to, have electric portable lighting systems, that are LED, and 4 of them on Lower Town campus, which would light, for Madison youth soccer practices. That will require some work because there's no power there right now. But that is the best option for use there. The lights, the other 8 lights are for Exchange Field. So as you know, we are going to be tearing up Exchange Field and redoing that this summer.
Or summer, yeah.
And we will propose to planning and zoning to install permanent lighting fixtures on Exchange Field during that project, which would be LED and not require portable systems, but be permanent lights there. Youth soccer is also kicking in money as Madison Little League is doing for the Nelson Project. It's a great partnership between the town and another youth sports organization.
I think there's just a question mark right now about how many of these lights we actually have to buy, what the budget is gonna be for the permanent lights, if they get approved planning and zoning, so they have to go through that approval process.
For town
Also-
campus too.
But, well, so that's the other thing, so town campus, even if we do portable, there's gonna be site work, right, where they have to put conduit, so there's an additional expense there that we're not really, we just don't know all the details yet, I think, to really vote on this, and I mean, I guess the question is, if we felt like it was a worthy project and we don't have any money left in ARPA, we would then, commit to relooking at this and maybe using fund balance to do it, because I would hate for them to miss out, but we just don't have enough information right now. I don't think.
I think just to give them a push, it's important that we don't use these diesel powered situations anymore. It's just not for youth sports, and the sound, the noise, and the diesel, fumes that are coming from there. To have electric situation going on is probably the best route to go. It does take additional work. It's not as easy as just flipping a switch and turning it on. But the light is that much better, and just the situation where kids are is that much cleaner and better. I don't see getting things passed by planning and zoning a problem, but it is another obstacle to cross.
So having just said yes to one youth sports group, I think that if we're saying that it makes long-term sense to go to permanent fixtures, that we should at least be clear in our commitment that the denial of the request for the portables is hand in glove with our commitment to see the permanent fixtures installed.
Yeah, or electric portable.
Yeah, I would not put permanent on Lower Town campus because that would deny sledding.
Oh.
Okay, but we would be doing nothing, we'd be continuing the diesels at
No.
Exchange until permanent fixtures could go in, right?
Well,
Right,
that's
so the plan-
starting to happen this summer.
The plan would be to have, when we reopen in August of 24, there would be permanent lighting on Exchange Field.
Which is not August of 23.
Correct. That still is gonna be offline while it regrows.
Yeah,
Is it offline in 23?
Starting this summer.
July of 23.
Okay.
yeah. So, and I think the problem is that the number this was done in the fall, and the number that was submitted was assuming you're buying all portable lighting, but it doesn't account for possible site work. And we're thinking, and then and we didn't know how much money they were gonna contribute. There's a lot of unknowns, so I think we're all committed to making this happen, but it might be less than what they're asking for, or it could be more. We'll just have to see. how the
But I
project
just don't
goes.
want it
Yeah.
to be a mixed signal. I think
agree.
that-
I agree.
that your suggestion is that we table it
Yeah,
and get
Yeah.
the right numbers. And with the assurance to soccer and football that we're gonna make this happen,
Yeah,
we just wanna do it. in the
It
best
just sounds a
possible
little
way.
more complicated, given we don't know all the details
Yeah.
about the field, planning and zoning, and their contribution.
I think I can withdraw my motion and we can just agree to table it.
Let's table.
Okay, so we're not voting it down.
Austin
We're
is
just.
desperate to say something.
Oh, sorry, what?
Would it be, and I don't want to overstep my bounds, but would it be possible to do an amount not to exceed instead of tabling?
Not necessarily because we have a bunch of other requests too, and we only have $225,000.
We're probably gonna have to find another funding source.
Yeah.
For it.
Yeah,
It just comes down
Which is why it's important for the organizations to hear our commitment, because
Right.
it's
Right.
not going to be the easy ARPA money, it's gonna probably come out of fund balance.
yeah. So, which is a little different process, but nonetheless, I think there's a commitment that we want to make it happen for that. And I'm hoping that, we'll have a clear budget and understand exactly what we're putting in there, because right now it's a little up in the air, right? If planning and zoning doesn't approve it,
Right.
then are you gonna have to go back to portables, so. So we'll read the table, item C, and then, I guess rather than making a motion, can we talk, I would recommend tabling the Bauer Farming Project Restoration, request as per my memo.
Sure.
Okay, so I won't even make a motion on that, and that's to defer until the Bauer Commission weighs in on that again with the revised proposal. And so I'd like to make now a motion to approve ARPA round 14 funding request from the VFW to refurbish post hall building request of this is horrible, requesting of $150,000.
So moved.
Second. Okay, so I know Larry, you're here, and I know we had met, I think over a year ago, walking through the building.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have toured the facility.
Yeah, yeah.
A little background, the facility is owned by the VFW, the building. The land is the town land. We currently have a 50-year lease with the town. I threw in the dollar. And that was the prior administration. So we have an agreement for 50 years to be on the property. Should the VFW, let's hope not, go out of business, then the building would revert to my people at the state who would try to sell it, which doesn't seem too good. The building was originally built by the members. And I understand that the building was requisitioned from other places. So windows, doors,
Okay,
whatever. And it was maintained by the members for many years. I know when I became involved in the mid-80s, we had a plumber and we had an electrician and we had a roofer and we had a painter. So they decided to do something, we're gonna do, don't worry, he'll take care of it. Well, those guys are all gone, as you probably can guess. And yours truly, by the way, is 80 years old next month, so
Nice.
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
We did have a failure of the roof about a year or so ago. And through the benefactor of actually Channel 3 came down and did a story. And as you remember that, keep that guy's name, by the way.
yeah.
He came and put a roof on it one day
Yeah,
and then said,
it's amazing, yeah.
I just gave you a roof.
Mhm.
So part of the building has been upgraded. What this project would do would be to remove all the outside shingles on the building, the shakes. See what kind of condition it's in. We're gonna replace all the windows with high energy efficient windows. And we're going to re-side the building from the roof down, maintenance free. Now, the figure that I gave in the application that we sent in on November 29th, so it's been with the committee, which I find out the committee is no longer. Was 150,000, so to prove that out, I had a contractor actually come in and estimate.
Mhm.
And he is damn close to $150,000. And what I would propose is, should we get the funding, we would set up a fund to our accounts at the VFW, we have accounts with the bank. And I would pay him in phases to do the project. So much for the windows, so much for the siding, so much. And we talked about ADA, we looked in the restrooms. they gotta be brought up to ADA compliance. So that's another project.
Right.
We have a kitchen that you've seen,
Mhm.
the sink and that's gotta be upgraded, so that's
Yeah.
part of it. I did get a very good, HIVAC guy came through and, we're looking at the splits. Right now, the building is fired by 2 oil burners with an, quote, you didn't hear me say this, underground oil tank that comes into the building. You didn't hear me say that.
Vinny's not this.
And it's forced hot air. And if I got the splits, which would be hung in the ceilings, I could go heat and air condition the building and get rid of all the oil.
Mhm.
So you talk about upgrading the building, you're upgrading the efficiency and you're making
Yeah,
the life a lot easier. He also mentioned that he could do the parking lot. Have you seen the parking lot?
yeah, no, and that's a heavily used parking lot by
That's a
Little League.
Yeah.
So,
This contractor is a restoration guy. I guess he remembers the building as a child. I guess there's a lot of activities that went on in the building. The building was put up, I'm told, in the mid-60s, so let's say 65.
mhm,
And then the post was formed in 57. So
mhm.
they met in people's homes and then they put the building together. I didn't realize the building was bits and pieces of
Mhm.
whatever they could get. So we're gonna bring it up to standards and it'll be a nice building to look at.
A question I have is, because I know when we had met and toured it, there was a discussion with Senator Cohen and Representative Parker about going after some state ARPA funds.
Yeah,
Um,
that didn't come to fruition.
did you send though a quote? Because I know she was asking for a lot of the
I
detailed
don't
project
think
information.
We got that far,
Okay,
but then I was made aware of the COVID fund, so I thought this might be an easier route to take.
right, okay.
You know,
Um,
I do. Yeah, I could probably go for other grants, but I would never be able to cover what I'm, the 150. I could,
Right.
5 here, 10 there, whatever,
right,
but, I think it's important that the building be kept up to par. I'm not trying to compete with the American Legion. If you see what they're doing in their building, I'm not anywhere near that
yeah.
extreme.
Well, I know that they had received, I think, $46,000 from the town.
Oh, I thought it was more like 150.
They got a grant from, that was one of them that came down from the
I've
state.
seen
Yeah,
pictures
that
in
was the
there.
state grant.
They're
Yeah,
doing the whole inside.
yeah, they're doing.
I don't necessarily think I need to
Yeah.
do the whole inside over. But I may do something like seal the floor up on the downstairs and stuff like that.
Right,
Because our heating system, I just paid Sullivan to come in,
right,
replace parts
Yeah.
and it's going. And then I found out we're heating a concrete slab to bring the
Right.
air in, so.
right.
I thought that was interesting. We'll look at that. We've looked at other sources of heat or gas,
Mhm.
that stuff. We can look at that too. So that's where we're at. We do have a local business that uses the kitchen,
Mhm.
and we do have now a dance group that uses the upstairs.
Oh, nice, yeah,
And it's available, it's a meeting hall. If other
Yeah.
people, other groups in town, a small group, 35, 40 people want to use it, fine. We can work something out.
Is there any contribution similar to some of the other ones that the VFW would be making themselves too?
Other than a very small grant for operating expenses, which I'm gonna ask for, of course. But, no. And our state organization doesn't do much.
Okay.
Now, I think what the senator was talking about is what happened in Guilford. But that was very unique to Guilford and very
Yeah.
unique to that legislature. They did get $1 million state bond to
right,
do that. Basically, they rebuilt the building.
yeah.
If you go over there, you can see what they did.
Well, no, but they did get state, from state bonding, the VFW or, American Legion did get, the additional money that you're talking about was from the state.
Yeah.
So my thought was that, having conversations this year through another, opportunity to get them to fund a portion of this. I mean, I think, like the American Legion did state bond funding. They also did a lot of fundraising. They had a big capital campaign. and then they received, roughly $46,000 from the town. So we're just looking to see if you'd had kind of laid some of those building blocks in place to
Yeah, I do.
cover the project, so.
Peggy, do you think that there is some state grant money that could be available?
I think we could definitely talk to them, you know. I don't know the status this year, because obviously we're in a different year, but I think there would be an opportunity for that. I'm wondering, like, if we did one phase right now, like, is there a phase of roughly like what we had provided to the American Legion, like $50,000?
I could probably get my contractor to come up with that, yeah.
Because you mentioned you had some phasing, and then we could do the first phase, and then why don't we get together with Senator Cohen again and talk about that?
I would think the exterior could be done as first phase,
Yeah,
windows in the siding.
do the windows and the siding. How much would you need for that about?
Ballpark. Probably 50, 75. It's a good portion of it.
So would we want to do that? And that's kind of how the American Legion was phased also. They did the exterior first, and
Yeah.
then they did the interior first, after that. So, I'm just thinking, to kind of be consistent with how we've treated other applications.
The other way I would do it is if I got the whole grant, then I would just set that up. And then phase it out as it goes.
I mean, in a perfect world, I'd like to see us make sure that they have the money they needed to keep the building functional and up to date and safe and maintenance free and all of that.
Right.
So I think, if we can buy some time with a smaller appropriation now. And then work to help with grant money. Apply some pressure to Senator Cohen, Representative Parker, and see what they can do to grease the skids. Up in Hartford, I think we can get money from the state, let's get that.
What if we, I'm hearing,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we've got Chris math
Yeah.
here though, in terms of what the phases might look like.
Right.
Would it be better to have Larry or his team come back and say, here's what it would cost definitively for
For
phase
phase
one,
and phase
here's
two.
what it would
So
cost definitively for.
table,
I just
table
don't-
the request. and
Yeah,
then
I'm kind of
the
thinking table
details,
now,
right.
because I don't know if we have Chris.
So if
numbers
it's
yet.
75, then we would approve 75, yeah,
And
We can just do it at our next
That's not a
meeting.
firm figure.
yeah,
Right.
right, so,
Neither is, well, to be honest with you, the 150, yeah, I just happened to come out with a good number.
yeah,
But, yeah, I could have,
Okay.
you want my contractor to break it down, I can,
why don't we do that, and then we'll table it, we'll also have a conversation about state money, and then you could put in some of those other projects, because they have a lot more money. The drive, you were mentioning the, parking lot, as well as the, ADA
so
accessibility, is that
part of-
is that part of the 150, the ADA?
from what I understand, yes.
Oh, okay, that's pretty good then,
The ADA,
Yeah.
yeah, the ADA
Yeah.
could run, because we're
Yeah.
talking about
that's important. I
two
mean, obviously,
restrooms completely gutted
Yeah.
and redone
Yeah,
with all the new fixtures and. I found out the petitions,
Yeah.
basically have to gut the thing and redo it.
right,
But that's different than what you were talking about by, the siding and the windows. and
Oh, yeah.
Heating and the air
Oh, yeah.
conditioning, those are projects that are still out there.
Primarily, it's the exterior of the building that's gotta be
you gotta
done.
protect it, right, you gotta.
Yeah, I mean, the interior could be done in phases.
So why don't, if you come back to our next meeting with the precise amount on the exterior work?
All right, let me see if I can. get
And
that.
then that'll help us do, on the, and we'll just table it, I'll withdraw the motion.
Does that mean my money goes away?
No,
Oh,
it
okay.
just means we're gonna table it for now. There's still money in ARPA.
You
And,
mentioned a deadline, because I
Well,
wasn't
it's
aware.
2 years.
It's a
Yeah,
few years, okay.
yeah, so,
This would be, the project might take, I'm gonna say 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Yeah,
we just
no,
have
you'll
to
be
have it
fine.
committed.
yeah,
So Stacy, before that 150, where were we at?
225.
225 remaining.
remaining.
So in theory, there's 75 if we were to kind of hold this 150 off to the side for the moment.
Yeah, that's my question, is that 75 gotta be spent.
I don't think it
Well,
impacts us
and
tonight,
then
Bruce. don't think
yeah,
it matters.
I don't think it
Based on
matters
the athletic.
tonight, so I think we'll be fine, and then I think if we can just, the next meeting, get, a better handle.
Yeah, you can phase it my way, or you
Yeah.
can phase it your way and say, you know,
Yeah.
be allocated so much at a time.
Right.
That's how an insurance, I know, I had to do my house from damage. That's how an
Yeah.
insurance company does it.
Okay,
They give you an estimate and then they phase it out. Okay,
so,
So we'll table that.
so, yeah, so we will withdraw my motion to approve, and we'll table that till our next meeting. And for more information, and I'll work with you to get kind of what we're looking for that,
I'll get
okay?
contract. We'll get
Yeah.
some numbers.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And then the final request, discuss, or like a motion to approve additional ARPA round 14 funding request from the First Congregational Church, the kitchen remodel, totaling $25,000.
Second.
Okay. I think this was one where I don't think we have granted any ARPA funds to religious organizations, so I don't know if that's an allowable use or what the committee, Al, you were on the ARPA committee.
I don't think we got
I don't-
any application.
Yeah,
gonna
we
ask.
talked about this in the early days of, and extending the offer to apply to all of the organizations in town.
Yeah.
This is the only one. I can tell you that it's the same kitchen when I was a teenager. So,
Yes,
Um,
I'm on the properties committee of the church, and yes, the kitchen needs upgrading.
And is it's a kitchen that's available to all,
so Hubley Hall is available. Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
okay,
And I don't think there's much, if any, charge.
Well, I've went to the Shoreline Men over 60, and every month they meet and use that kitchen. And that's not part of the church, that's an outside organization.
No, what I mean is there's no charge. Or it's very, very nominal.
You have to take out like a event insurance policy or anything like that. to use it?
I don't want to speak for the church itself, this is Larry speaking. They've had people would have receptions after a wedding or a funeral, that type of thing. That would be a part of the fee for the church.
right.
Hmm.
They are talking about a soup kitchen, but don't get me into that.
So it is
I think the
available-
word
it's
they're
available
using
to
is
do.
community, they want a community kitchen, a
Right.
community kitchen.
Well, I know that the Congregational Church, obviously, especially with the community and everything, is very much just a lot of community activities. And I was looking at it more from a perspective of we are funding a religious organization using taxpayer dollars, that's all. I guess it is technically allowable under, and it has nothing to do with the Congregational Church, no matter what, right? So it could be any church organization. I guess we didn't get other applications, so.
Yeah.
And
And I guess as long as anybody could apply to use it, I'm just even thinking like the Super Bowl, if a individual wanted to participate, they had to have access to a commercial kitchen. So as long as this falls in that commercial kitchen space where anybody from town could apply to use it, regardless of.
And that, but not all churches allow that.
Mhm.
So, sometimes it might be for,
A rental.
approved events or,
Or-
yeah.
In
So,
my case, if they want to rent the hall, it's one fee, if they want to include the kitchen,
right,
it's more.
Mhm.
But I do have a community kitchen.
yeah,
But the kitchen is also inspected by the town and the state.
you're talking about the VFW,
Yes.
right? And is that a commercial kitchen? Is that considered, you
Yeah.
have people use it as a commercial kitchen?
You know, she bakes bread there, so she.
Yeah,
it to
that's
the
right.
health
Yeah.
department company, and
Right,
also the state,
right, okay,
and of course, they have different standards.
okay, yeah. Well.
So
I
did
mean,
this,
it's
did
a-
this application come through the ARPA committee?
No.
So I guess the
Oh.
question is, why would
I thought it
the
was-
church come and present to us? then?
Wait,
It came in between the gap, the committee kind of sunsetted, and then there was a time frame a couple weeks before the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
Pretty much officially disbanded the committee, so it did come in before the committee was totally sunsetted.
But I guess my point is, why wouldn't we then, if we're now the committee, why
Mhm.
wouldn't the church then come I know Bruce is advocating for it because he's a member of the church.
Well, and actually, I was just thinking about that for a second.
Yeah.
So full disclosure, I'm a member of the church.
Yeah.
If anybody's uncomfortable with that.
Why don't they just come and present to us then about what they're planning?
I think we could say
They
that,
didn't usually come. I mean, not every applicant would
Yeah,
come. They would
that's
submit
why
the
I'm not
application,
talking to the church.
And the
No, you're-
committee would discuss the application.
If you guys don't want me to vote on it, I'm happy to.
well, I'm just thinking because I only, it has nothing to do with congregational church, you know, it's more about the community access, right? And so that's where maybe it's better just to have them come, you know, and explain how they use it, what the rental policies are, that kind of thing. Cause I see like the VFW is a little bit more of a quasi-public type of organization versus,
Well,
this is a church, I mean.
we are a 501c. I'm
Yeah,
with the church.
you're not.
I assume they are too.
No, but in terms of the, you're also, it's town property, right? You own the building, but it's town
Oh, yeah,
property.
yeah.
So that was my only thinking, unless, you know, if you guys
Right.
feel strongly, you'd rather.
It's also a revenue generating thing as well, right? I mean, like I've been to a funeral there as an example, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming that hall was rented out
Yeah,
as a rental fee, correct? So
I don't
having a
know.
new kitchen,
Why don't we have Reverend Better come in
Yeah,
and
that would
present
really
it?
just answer the question.
Yeah, okay, that's-
They can do, and then we have plenty of money still
yeah,
to do it.
yeah. I don't
And
think
we
we're in a
just
rush.
table that one. I guess I'm always worried precedents, right? And like,
I have
okay.
a mild discomfort there. I'm not saying we shouldn't hear them. I have a mild discomfort with, the towns appearing to be helping out one house of worship. And I realize the others could apply, Jen, you're absolutely right, but for whatever reason they didn't. I'd certainly want to make sure that the federal regulations that guide this program allow for these public monies to go to that kind of a private entity. I'm trying to think in the past. Sometimes the town has done favors for houses of worship, or houses of worship have allowed the town to use parking lots and things like that. I don't ever remember money moving between town government and a house of worship. Stacy, am I?
You can look further and research it, but it does say not for profits. Churches are not for profit. I don't know if there is any reference to religion in there, but we can certainly look.
I think it would be just good to check that box. I'm certainly supportive of, you know, it's well used and they've been phenomenal for the town. It's been a partnership with the Green, like you said, but it's a little different now when we're giving money to an organization, a religious organization, that's all. So,
Yeah, again, is there an opportunity to co-invest too? Is it, you know, does the membership of that particular church? You know,
Have
do a
they-
fundraiser.
I think
to
this is
help
part of a
contribute.
larger project, isn't it? If I recall in the application, they're doing a larger renovation. So this is just to help them. Yeah.
They are renovating the church house.
But again, that's
Yeah.
helpful.
They're using
That's
funds
helpful.
as a sale of their property.
Well, yeah, that's what I read in the application. And then this is.
For
this
one
is-
other reason that I don't know, they used to own the house on Bradley Road. They sold the house and they're using that
Okay.
revenue to upgrade the building. And I guess the kitchen came up in the process.
And I think we might find that a lot of towns are doing this. And so we're in good company and it's not a big deal. It just always a show.
Always a good
Yeah.
to check.
Yeah.
So I think we need to speak to Al's concern, I think fairly.
Yeah.
It might be helpful if Reverend Better reached out to the other houses of worship. If they were inclined to write a letter of support saying that we're comfortable with this, would that, how,
Yeah.
I mean, so. Because you bring up a valid point, and I think it deserves to be settled.
It's only a mild discomfort on my part. I'm not saying I'm against it. I just don't ever, there's no precedent for this.
Well, there's never been ARPA money before either.
Well, and I guess you would want to make sure that the other houses of worship didn't or that they did not submit an application because they didn't think that they could receive money.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think just double checking that it is allowable and that other communities have used the funds for this purpose. If we see this as a common practice,
Mhm.
then I think it probably makes you feel more comfortable, right?
Yeah.
If we see that a lot of towns have done this, because, there's always partnerships, I think, with the town. Then I'm far more comfortable with it.
Yeah, just make sure
Yeah.
we're within our bounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
I'm ready to move forward and learn some more.
okay.
Okay.
So we will, then, if I think I'm gonna withdraw my motion and we will agree to a table item F. To the, future meeting. All right, so. Discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation of $13,148 for replacement and repairs of remote radio site HVAC refurbishment, subject to Board of Finance approval.
So.
Second.
Okay, and this, go ahead. You're on.
So when we upgraded our radio system many years ago. Radio today is different. When I first came on in 2006, we had copper phone line to the attic at Legend Hill, and there was a radio there, and then we communicated back and forth. Now what we have is a wireless computer network at 5 remote sites, and these sites all need to have good power, generators, HVAC, air conditioning, heating, and so forth. And, so we kind of became property managers of these 5 sites, kind of backed into it, without realizing that we needed to do this. And we had a catastrophic failure at the Dorset Lane site, which is a cabinet. And of our 5 sites, 4 of them have dual units, they're redundant. They're like very, very specialized air conditioners. And there was a major electrical failure. I don't know if it was a lightning strike or something, but both units went out at once. We were able to repair one for about a $4,000 bill. And now the bulk of this $13,000 is replacement of one unit that kind of blew apart the compressor valve. And that's $90 that we have. Then for the other 8 units that we have at our 5 sites, I have a company, and it was very difficult to find a company that would do this work. I had several local HVAC companies either produced the quote or came out and looked and said, no, we're not gonna do it. But environmental engineering out of Milford does this kind of work, and they give us a very good quote. And I'm gonna have them go to each of the 5 sites, service and check the parts, the wear parts that have been neglected over the last few years. And going forward from, starting July 1, in the next budgets going forward, we have money, we requested and it was approved to at least have an annual visit to each one of these sites, service the air conditioning units, just to see what's going on before we have another catastrophic failure. So.
Do we need to build more into the operating budgets? I mean, this equipment only has a useful life, I'm assuming, and are we gonna get surprised in year 8?
Well, that's a good conversation to have. Two of the sites we built in 2017, the other sites are older. So yeah, we should do an assessment to see how far down the road. My guess is that at least 20 years of life in these units.
Most likely.
Maybe something up to that.
They are towers and lightning hits them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to remember that the Dorset site was struck by lightning. That's a remote site that's there. We can't go any higher. It's a very small footprint. When that actually went out, we couldn't find anybody that would work on it. The answer my brain when that plywood posted up, put a household generator, generator driven air conditioning unit in, and that got us by because that site is very imperative to know that in their operation of going.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like an-
Yeah, I know it. It's a no-brainer. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And I'm sorry you had to wait for that.
Thanks,
It
guys.
was a long one. Okay, item number 16, discuss and take action to amend the charge for the ad hoc affordable housing committee.
So moved. Second.
Okay, I sent you, there was, a note about this, about the party affiliation. There was a little bit of the charge had a stricter affiliation than what the state does. And I think it was a holdover from when we did the plan. And then on top of that, we just needed to get enough applicants to make sure it all balanced out right.
So that's
So,
exactly
yeah.
right. We had an extra person who was disqualified because they're on an elected board and.
Would have been more balance.
So it would have been fine. To be fair, I think, I know I missed when we were doing this, I missed that minority representation thing. What is the state requirement?
The state is, I mean, you have to look at the number on there and I forget what it is. I think it's maybe a 7. I think you can actually have up to 5 of one party coalition. So if we just go with the state, then we're fine. But the thinking is that we're gonna have to redo the whole committee with an ordinance because of the new charter. So I thought, let's just make this minor amendment because we don't want to kick somebody off, right? And we don't want to expand the numbers right now. I think we just let the committee go forward as is. And then when we redo the ordinance, we can have that conversation about maybe we do want to keep it, balanced like we had for the affordable housing plan. So we've got this year to do that, but I just didn't want to say, oh, your meeting is not legal or whatever, because you have too many in one party. So technically it does, I guess, allow for, I can't remember, I checked with Nancy. And she
So
told
a
me
group
it
of
was
7
fine.
is allowed to have 5 of one party, is
Yeah,
that?
I
Is
can't
that what
remember
your
if it was 5,
resolution is?
whatever
Sounds like
they
we have to
have
close
is
next
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just go with the state, and Nancy had said we would be fine. We're fine with the numbers, it's just an issue with how the charge is written. So,
Which is what we motioned to go with
Yeah,
what
right.
has been recommended.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
so, and then we can, fix all this when we do the full ordinance.
Yep.
Yeah, the committee, so, okay,
All right.
okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great, I would like to move to, have citizens comment, hold on. Change the order of the agenda. The citizens comment was supposed to go before executive session. I missed this. So I would like to ask for citizens comments now. Do we have any citizens comments?
There are none.
Okay, so with that, whoever's watching this, we are going to be going into executive session. And so we will actually just be turning off the Zoom part of the meeting. And there'll be no action items taken after the executive session. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to move to executive session and invite in Sam DeBura, Chief Drum, and I think Stacy left. Oh, and Stacy Novitz. Okay.
You're gonna do it, right?
Second.
You're gonna be the executive.
Okay.